All right. Well, we might go ahead and get started so we can dive into the discussion. I'm sure we'll have people joining us throughout the afternoon. My name is Amy Kenyon. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships with Enactus Canada, and welcome to the very first TD Entrepreneurship Forum. Thank you for joining us today. Our partnership with TD Bank is rooted in the delivery of the TD Entrepreneurship Challenge, which empowers Enactus teams to identify, create, and deliver projects that teach relevant entrepreneurship skills, empowering aspiring and existing entrepreneurs. Over the past 13 years, the impact that our students have made through this challenge has been impressive. Let's take a look. Incredibly impressive. To drive project ideation for the challenge while inspiring Enactus teams across the country to create even more community empowerment projects focused on supporting entrepreneurs, this year we launched the TD Entrepreneurship Project Idea Pitch. Through this new platform, we've challenged you to develop an initiative to help Canadian entrepreneurs and small business owners that have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've pulled together some amazing panelists today to help answer all of your questions and inspire you as you refine your project ideas. We'll start with a panel discussion and then a Q&A period. We couldn't be more proud to provide a platform for the innovative student leaders in our network to connect, share, and learn from each other, and hear from some of Canada's top business leaders joining us today. And we're really excited about this new project ideas that will come out of this forum and this pitch competition. I want to thank TD Bank Group for this opportunity, and I'd like to welcome Nancy King, Associate Vice President of Small Business Banking and Business Banking Segments from TD Bank Group, to kick off today's forum.
Thank you very much, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. As a brief introduction to myself, I've been with TD Business Banking for nearly 14 years. Most recently, I led the small business banking team in the GTA, and in my current role, I head TD Small Business Bank's specialized remote sales teams and the business bank segments group, which includes professional banking, franchise banking, and women entrepreneur. I am happy to be here at today's forum on behalf of TD. In 2007, TD was invited to partner with Enactus Canada to support the Entrepreneurship Challenge. This was a natural fit given TD's commitment to strengthening Canada's economy. We invest in training, entrepreneurship, and small business-focused programs where we operate. Through the TD Ready commitment, our corporate citizenship platform, our aspiration is to create the conditions people need to succeed and fully participate in a changing world. The impact projects that all of you implement will result in communities benefiting from collaboration and innovation. The hard work you've put into this challenge is inspirational. Your entrepreneurial action will help make a difference in our country's economic, social, and environmental recovery. This work has the potential to drive economic growth and job creation, lift up local communities, and help open new doors. Already you have achieved so much, and we can't wait to see what innovative solutions you create through the TD Entrepreneurship Project Idea Pitch. The question we will be addressing in today's forum is, how can we help small businesses negatively impacted by COVID-19 bounce back, helping improve economic opportunities for all? To help us through this discussion, I am pleased to introduce the leaders on our panel, joining me now on screen. For the viewers joining us online, you may want to switch to speaker view for the best view of this discussion. And panelists, please give us all a wave as I read through your names and bios. Dan Kelly, President, CEO, and Chair, Canadian Federation of Independent Business. In his capacity as President and CEO, Dan is the lead spokesperson and advocate for the views of the Federation's 95,000 small and medium-sized member businesses. In 2015, Dan was named one of the top 100 most powerful and influential people in government and politics by Power and Influence magazine. Dan has served on dozens of provincial and federal committees and task forces and has represented Canada's small businesses at the International Labour Organization in Geneva. He currently serves on Finance Canada Payments Consultative Committee, FinPay, and the Canadian International Trade Tribunal Advisory Committee. Nice to see you, Dan. Karen Grieve-Young, Chief Executive Officer, Futurepreneur Canada. Karen helps young entrepreneurs succeed as CEO of Futurepreneur Canada, a national nonprofit that has helped 13,000 plus young entrepreneurs launch businesses that contribute to sustainable economic development in their communities and for Canada. Prior to joining Futurepreneur in 2018, she led corporate development and partnerships at Mars Discovery District and previously worked in San Francisco, New York, and London, UK at organizations including Bain & Company, Gap Inc., and the UK's Institute of Cancer Research. Welcome, Karen. Deanne Brisebois, President and CEO, Retail Council of Canada. Deanne has spent more than 39 years leading retail associations. The Retail Council of Canada is the largest retail association in Canada, representing more than 45,000 retail establishments, accounting for more than 70% of all retail sales in Canada. Deanne has and continues to serve on several boards and advisory councils across North America, such as Toronto Region Board of Trade, St. Mary University's David Sobey Center for Retail, and University of Alberta School of Retailing and Ryerson's University School of Retail. In 2019, Deanne was presented with the Star Women in Grocery Award, recognizing outstanding women who demonstrated expertise, innovation, and leadership in the industry. Hello, Deanne. Christelle Francois, President, Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. Christelle is a bilingual executive leader who is passionate about her community. She was recently appointed as the president of the CBCC. She is also an entrepreneur who has the pulse on the leaders of entrepreneurship, innovation, and advocacy. Christelle possesses extensive experience as a strategy consultant, where she specializes in developing revenue models and implementing growth metric systems for various organizations. She most recently assisted in leading the 2020 Lobby Day initiative with our current Prime Minister, and has volunteered and sat on the board of numerous organizations such as Apathy is Boring and Head and Hands. Good to see you, Christelle. Well, frankly, an esteemed panel, so welcome and thank you all for being here. I know the audience is keen to hear your views on the topic, so let's dive right in. I'm going to start with a quick fire round of insights. We'll give each of the panelists 2 minutes to share their thoughts on how we can help small businesses negatively impacted by COVID-19 bounce back. So first, I'm going to start with you, Dan.
You know, look, thank you so much, and thank you to TD and Enactus for the invitation. It's great to be here. Happy St. Patrick's Day. A guy named Kelly has to mention that. I do want to say, you know, it is incredible to see what entrepreneurs are still able to do despite the challenges that have been thrown in their path over the last number of months. It's been pretty bleak. We at CFIB have taken 78,000 calls from business owners, many of whom are at their wits' end. We've had about a dozen business owners call us contemplating taking their own lives as they see their businesses just crumbling in their fingers right now. So I got to tell you, it's pretty serious. Nothing like we've ever seen at CFIB, certainly in my organization's 50-year history. But times like this, of course, also bring in a whole bunch of change, and change is an opportunity for many people, particularly for younger entrepreneurs, to look at doing things differently than has been done in the past. But we've got to get through this incredibly rough patch that faces us. Lockdowns have had a huge negative impact on businesses in retail, restaurants and hospitality, the service sector more broadly, and arts and recreation. Those sectors that often rely on face-to-face dealings with their customers, sometimes even physical touching with their customers, like in a hair salon or a massage therapy clinic. Those have been the most heavily impacted businesses across the country. And they also have the longest road to recovery. Many businesses, of course, affected by border restrictions, lockdown measures, capacity controls, additional costs to ensure that they protect themselves, their employees, their customers from COVID. So the obstacles to small businesses are immense. But it's been really encouraging to see many other businesses try to find new ways around this. All the restaurants that have pivoted to delivery, retailers that are looking at adding curbside pickup, service sector businesses that are providing courses online or doing gym visits virtually. There's all sorts of great ideas that have come out through the pandemic, and many of those innovations are going to last. Things that businesses will continue to do as we come out of COVID-19. We're in a rough patch, but our research at CFIB has shown that businesses that often start during turbulent economic times are more likely to last. If you start a business and can make money or find a pathway during what is the worst economic circumstances that you might be facing, it really can give you some lessons that can carry you through for many, many years to come. Lots more to unpack, but looking forward to doing that in the questions ahead.
Thanks so much, Dan, for that real response, and the insights there, but also the optimism and silver linings. Karen, on to you.
A lot of the same themes, building on Dan. I think we are at this really interesting time where it feels like there's this tension, this juxtaposition, where on the one hand, we really desperately want to help as many small businesses as possible get through this pandemic and survive the pandemic so that they can thrive on the other side. And so I think a lot of what we'll be focusing on is that. And then exactly as Dan just mentioned, this is also a pretty inspiring time to launch a business. If you can launch now when things are darkest, it could bode incredibly well for your prospects. And it's interesting at Futurepreneur. So I hope that a lot of the members of the audience find out about us, because we can help you launch when you are starting your successful business, because that's what we do. We help entrepreneurs start so that they can succeed. And we have loan financing and mentorship for entrepreneurs launching new businesses. And we've seen an extraordinary increase in new business launches this year. And that is really promising, and that's important for Canada, because as much as we try to help businesses survive, the reality is that they won't all make it through, and they will leave holes on main streets across the country, small and large. And we want those main streets to be filled, because these small businesses are the heart and soul of their communities. And so if a coffee shop or a hair salon goes under, we want the next coffee shop or hair salon to be able to come in and thrive in that location. But first, let's focus on the people we're trying to help get through. So we're spending a lot of time, and I will say Futurepreneur has seen an extraordinary increase in new business launches this year, over 30% more new businesses than in prior years, which is great. We do want to help businesses survive, though, and these small business owners are being incredibly creative, coming up with solutions. And so I think it's on us to shop, to buy. People whose incomes haven't been impacted, spend your income, right? So, and there are certain things people assume that online is free. Well, when it's the gym that usually has you come in person, who's doing an online class, pay for the value that you're getting from that. If your hair salon's closed, and this isn't necessarily for the students in the audience, but you might be able to help these solutions come out. If your retailer or hair salon's closed, ask if you can buy a gift certificate, a gift card for future purchase, but you're putting money in the pockets of that entrepreneur now. So I think that small business owner now. So I think the reality is that there are ways of supplementing the revenue that these small businesses are losing when their doors are closed for reasons that have nothing to do with their business and everything to do with keeping people safe. So a lot will come on both of these themes, and I'm excited to hear from Diane and Christelle as we come up with different solutions and ideas.
Thanks so much, Karen. Certainly, we're seeing an increase in new accounts and businesses at TD as well. And so I think some of them are taking advantage of the TD partnership that we have with Futurepreneur with the side hustle program. So Deanne, I'll throw it over to you now.
I'll put myself off mute, which is it's going to be the bane of my existence. So I want to echo Dan's comment and thank you, Nancy and TD Bank, because it is so important to have a strong financial institution close to entrepreneurs and small business. And it's certainly something that needs to continue because our entrepreneurs, our small to mid-sized businesses certainly need that help. The biggest challenge is that there's no playbook. And so everything that has happened to our retail businesses has never happened before. So they couldn't say, well, how did we react? What did we do a year ago? And to add to that challenge, there were very few tools. I mean, if it wasn't for key associations such as CFIB, Retail Council, and others, many of the businesses out there would have absolutely no roadmap. So, so that was extremely important. Let me just say that there's always a silver lining in when we face challenges. And while I think Karen and Dan covered many of the issues that our retailers faced during the pandemic, one of the silver lining is the growth of digital, and also small businesses or small retailers specifically finally jumping on the bandwagon and making whatever investments they could make to grow their online presence, to grow their digital presence. And also what we've seen during these challenging times, and I would agree with Karen, some will make it and some will not. For those who I believe will make it, are also those who understood the importance of partnerships for small businesses and finding other businesses that can complement what you're doing. Because the challenge is for a smaller business is to increase its assortment of or products or services during challenging times because you're short of cash. And so not being isolated. And that's challenging because, again, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have many hours left in the day to start networking with other folks and reaching out. And so my apologies for the background sound. They're drilling on the roof of our building. So there you go. That I can't control. But I think I'll close by saying that while they're facing a lot of challenges, the students in this competition can help by creatively thinking about how we save these entrepreneurs some time to be able to network, learn from others, and also partner with other businesses that can support them. These will be challenging times, but I would say they'll also be exciting times.
Thanks so much, Deanne. Christelle, you just released a report alongside BDC, so I'm sure you have some really relevant insights even on the Black business community.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, firstly, I want to thank, TD and Enactus for having me and all of us here to really have this discussion. But to your point, that's exactly it. The Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce recently released a report in partnership with the BDC where we were really exploring what the key challenges currently are for Black entrepreneurs across Canada, and also providing some solutions in terms of recommendations. And some of the key things that we found was that around access to capital is a huge challenge for the community. But also, I think during the pandemic, those challenges are that much more amplified. And so, how do we ensure that from a policy standpoint, whether it's federal, provincial, that there are programs in place to ensure that these companies are able to stay afloat during these difficult times, and have that necessary support. But then also the mentorship piece and the marketing and advertising piece was something else that we found in the report was a key need. So for me, what I recognize is that through this, that opportunity, similar to what everyone's mentioned here, but that opportunity to pivot is extremely critical in these times. And so we have a lot of entrepreneurs that, whether their business is online, but perhaps not fully understanding the full capabilities of understanding the ad modeling, how do you really pivot and structure, a strategic ad strategy that's online to ensure that whether your business is a brick and mortar or if it's online, you're really able to capitalize through those various channels. So I think even for the young students here listening who are maybe you already have a business or you have some ideas, I think just identifying what those gaps are and challenges are for those entrepreneurs to really provide that support would be critical and would be really helpful during these times, especially since many of them have had to lay off some of their staff. And so now taking on additional work in terms of as a founder of a company. So I think that piece is extremely critical, but also we find that some of these entrepreneurs also require assistance around mentorship. And mentorship in the sense of because one of the things to recognize is during the pandemic, you have various companies that are at different levels in their business. So you could be that multi-million-dollar company and you can tap into different, lines of credit or things like that to keep you afloat. And then you have your medium size and your small business. And so these challenges are slightly different for each type of entrepreneur as well. And so sometimes those solutions are slightly different as well. And so it's really critical to just look at those in that specific lens as well to ensure that we're really looking at solutions that benefit them in the best way possible. And so just to close off in the sense of mentorship, I think some companies ensuring that they have a business model that allows them to continue to scale. And so sometimes having that support through a mentor, an advisor for their business, where really find that the advisor role is a critical piece as they pivot from a financial standpoint, really understanding how do I ensure that my company can continue to thrive being more lean? Because I think even if companies do get that new access to funding, I do think they'll be looking to spend it slightly differently than before. So how do we ensure that with a leaner cash flow, because that's one of the key challenges that we're seeing, how can we ensure that they can continue to thrive in that sense? And so I do think it is a great time as well, because I think through difficult times, innovation is always born and new ideas are always conceptualized. And so I'm excited to kind of see how we can kind of get through this challenging time, but I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to kind of learn from it and allow us to really pivot in a positive way.
Great, Chantal. Hi, Chriselle. I'll say what a fantastic start to this forum. A lot of fantastic insights. So maybe let's get a little bit more targeted with questions to really help the students refine their project ideas. Dan and Deanne, I'm going to start the first question with you. And so there was a little bit of overlap, I'm sure, with your response earlier, but if you could tell us about what you've seen with small businesses over the past year, and I'll add perhaps deeper on their sentiments today with more recent vaccine or variant news. Dan, you're the voice of countless small businesses, so what are your thoughts?
It's a mix of some degree of optimism. People are looking at what's happening, and it is starting to feel to more business owners like we're at the beginning of the end of COVID-19. The question is, how long is that exit ramp going to be? And it's feeling awfully long, I know, for all of us. What I'll say is that there are a lot of businesses that have been fundamentally affected by this. The average small business, our research shows, has inherited $170,000 in new COVID-related debt. A lot of that is not necessarily new bank financing. Some of it is government-backed financing, but much of it is unpaid bills, bills to landlords for subsidy programs that just didn't work, bills for suppliers, for inventory you had to buy for your restaurant, then chuck out, then rebuy when you were closed and shut down, and then reopen, shut down, reopen. So those bills haven't gone away, and they're going to be really, really significant, dragging many businesses down over the next number of months. We are predicting that 180,000 businesses, 180,000 additional businesses will close for good before the pandemic is over. I'm giving these young folks all these great reasons for optimism for the future here. I'll switch in just a second. But when you see that happening, I guess one of the messages I want to make sure that doesn't get lost is that sometimes these traditional businesses, bricks and mortar retail, restaurants, arts and recreation spaces, bars and nightclubs, there are many that are predicting that there are a lot of Canadians that have a lot of money because people with a salaried income haven't been as economically affected as business owners, and that money will start to come back to the economy as COVID restrictions lift, and certainly when governments start to tell us that we can start to return to normal life, go back to the office, go to the theater, take a trip. I just want to make sure that people don't forget that some of those businesses, they didn't cease to operate just because they didn't adopt the right technology or the right innovation. Some of them just didn't work during a once in 100-year pandemic. And when those conditions change, there may be opportunities. And for some, if they've seen many of their competitors knocked out due to COVID, but they've been able to last, or they're a new business that's entering that sector that has been hard hit, there may be some opportunities for entrepreneurs in some of those areas. I'm not suggesting that people ignore the innovation and technological lift and other strategies that have been successful during COVID. In fact, quite the contrary. I think that we've seen 150,000 businesses go online that weren't there pre-pandemic, and that's good news. But it's a combination of those two things, recognizing the damage that has been done, some of it being temporary, and that there are going to be some new opportunities for business owners, consumers armed with money to spend when we crawl out of our basements as we've been locked up for so long. People are anxious to get back and, like I am, go to a restaurant with my friends and family once again.
Thanks so much, Dan. And honestly, St. Paddy's Day, this is full of water, but I wish it was with a Guinness, right? But
I failed.
Deanne,
I failed my ancestors with no green. So
Yes, I can see.
Deanne, I know you've had some recent events with your retailers. Tell us what they're saying.
Well, many are saying what Dan was talking about a moment ago. However, let me turn it around and talk about some opportunities for the students that they may want to look at. As you noted, we've been talking to a lot of our small merchants across the country. One of the things that they're trying to better understand is what are the new opportunities. So I'll give you an example, and that may be helpful for the students. If I was in apparel, and as we all know, we've changed the way we dress, what we wear. Many of us may be wearing jeans or sweatpants, flip-flops instead of dress shoes. So one of the big challenges for smaller businesses is trying to rethink their assortment of products, rethink how they could they be sourcing those products locally, and how to understand the changing lifestyles and how to adjust. So that would be a great project for students. Say, this is your business. This is who you used to serve. This is what's changed. The research shows that trend will continue. So how do we get that information for you? What are creative ways to work with local businesses? We have, and I'll give an example of a small jewelry retailer who's a member who decided to work with local artists and get them to design some of the jewelry. And they focused specifically on Indigenous and Black artists and really told their stories and became very much part of the community and alive. But going back to answer what I said earlier, those ideas seem so simple, but entrepreneurs are so busy trying to survive that they feel overwhelmed. And this is where students could bring, not revolutionary ideas, but ideas that are true to running a good small business, and just add context and give them some creative ideas. Those are areas that we've noticed where there is a lack. Obviously, there's a lack of funding, lack of money. But if you think of a retail business, it's about products. It's about making sure people know what you're selling. It's about making it exciting, and it's about differentiating yourself. And if you can think of projects that help in that area, that would be amazing.
Great, some new ideas for this group of students. Karen, perhaps a different perspective for newer businesses.
Yeah, I think as we've heard, a lot of businesses will start now, and they'll start with new models. And I think that even new businesses starting that may be in more traditional sectors. Let's say a restaurant starting. We've helped restaurants launch new restaurants in restricted areas in the last year. They're launching with it already in mind that they cannot rely on in-service dining to drive their profits, and they're thinking differently about their menus and differently about their delivery model, and thinking about their experience they're providing differently. And I kind of want to build on something that Deanne shared about that experience and the assortment. And I think the reality is that a lot is outside of entrepreneurs' control, and that includes the supply that's available to them right now. So creative solutions to have a very top tier, engaging, compelling shopping experience when perhaps the product just isn't necessarily there would be really, really helpful. So we are seeing that. We're seeing it in packaging. We're seeing it in the online engagement that entrepreneurs are doing. And that's a place where using social media very differently is an opportunity that's emerged now. But there's also social media fatigue. And so I think what will be really interesting is when people can start going back to in-person. That's a huge opportunity that I don't know. I think we've thought about and talked about how people will go back to in-person doing things we used to do in person, but we're different now. It's been quite a year. And so what are the new engagements? What are the new models that will meet people's needs when they open back up? And I think that the hybrid isn't going away, actually. The gym that we helped start in Saskatoon, the community gym that had just opened before the pandemic and then went virtual and was lending out its equipment so that people could participate in the virtual classes, they might have a hybrid model going forward, because I think people might ask for that. That might be quite a burden on businesses. So figuring out how to help businesses balance that request or requirement to do it both ways is going to be very interesting in the time ahead.
Thanks, Karen. Christelle, anything to add?
Yes, I mean, I think I would just add that, the other opportunity that I think presents itself just through some of the findings that we found at the Chamber is that, because of the pandemic and the delays that are happening, so especially, for example, if you have a skincare or cosmetic line and you need your bottles, your packaging, your labeling that sometimes are being ordered in, and because of the delays of shipment, I think this also opens up the opportunity for Canadian companies to be more local, at an affordable price, and that will also stimulate our economy as well. So I think there's that opportunity that's there to provide some of those items that oftentimes entrepreneurs are buying overseas or things like that. But if these are things that we can offer at a competitive rate locally, I think that would be, a great way for these companies to still be able to meet some of their requirements, because, I've seen that there's literally some businesses have lost, purchase orders, like opportunities to actually be able to sell just because they're waiting on their packaging. And so I think that presents an opportunity for in the Canadian landscape as well. And I think, to Karen's point, I love what you just mentioned in terms of operating in that hybrid. And I think that's completely true, because I think once we get out of this, in-person experience will be the crux of what I think consumers will be looking for. And so I encourage a lot of the, young students that even if you're thinking about ideas that are outside the box, in terms of in-person experience, how that can be elevated and heightened in physical spaces I think that will be a great tool, because people will be looking for that human connection is natural, it's just what we connect as people. And so I think that's going to be a huge touch point as well. So that's what I would add to that.
Okay. So I think this next question seems simpler than it really is. And I'll ask Karen and Christelle to start with this one. If you could do one thing for small businesses in Canada, what would it be? Karen?
Well, obviously we would just open everything up and everything would be open and safe and accessible. And that magic wand, I think, is a little bit more elusive than we'd like it to be. I think, honestly, the challenge we have is that these entrepreneurs need to pay their bills. They need to be able to support their workers. And so I think, Dan mentioned that staggering debt figure. I think the one thing that we can do is figure out how to support these small businesses. That doesn't entail them taking on more debt. It's figuring out creative ways to cover their expenses or bring in revenue for them. So students, that's the opportunity here is how do you either cover expenses creatively so that they can pay their employees, pay their vendors, or how do you help them get revenue from new and creative sources?
Great. Christelle?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, capital is what they need, and not in the form of loans either. And I think, me being at the Canadian Black Chamber, for Black entrepreneurs, it's an additional challenge, because what we found is that, some of the challenges in terms of just due to systemic racism that's being experienced within, sometimes with financial institution, causes that additional challenge as well. And so I think there's that nuance that, Black entrepreneurs face, and also just due to, other challenges in terms of access to income through family, wealth access in that capacity. And so, but I do think resources to really allow them to cover some of the debt that's been incurred during this time would be critical. Financial stress is no joke, and it really takes a toll on families. The thing we have to remember is that these entrepreneurs sometimes have spouses, children. So this is a family, it's impacting entire families. And so I think that providing them with that resource is critical. And also potentially, I know there's been a lot of new services being offered for emotional and mental health support as well. Oftentimes entrepreneurship is highly glamorized, and though it's great, I'm an entrepreneur myself, though it's a great avenue, mental health support is needed, and it's extremely crucial, especially during these times as we're living through a pandemic. And so I think, though I know you asked for one, but I do think capital, access to capital and mental health support is extremely crucial, and would really transform people's lives.
Both were great points, so I'll let you have that, Christelle. Deanne, Dan, do you have anything you want to highlight? Deanne first.
Yeah, obviously, I think what Karen and Christelle have offered is would be on my bucket list. Let's put it that way. But if I had one wish, it would be to be able to convince all Canadians to spend their money with small business, and to convince governments, even though they're facing financial challenges, to look at a way to do New York does this, New York City does this throughout the year, where they have a sales tax free week shopping. So my wish would be that consumers really do, Canadians really take it at heart. It's great to say I'm going to support small business. It's a different thing to do it. And I represent large members as well. We represent large members. So, this is not speaking against the Canadian Tires and the Costcos and the Walmarts and the likes, but I think that they have, as Christelle was saying, they have lines of credits, they have more money. In these critical times, my wish would be for Canadian consumers to not just think with their heart, but think with their wallet.
Thanks, Dan.
The benefit of going last is there's all the good ideas are already on the table. Look, there's a long list, but I will say Christelle hit it on the head. Well, Christelle and Karen talking about the need for some debt relief for businesses that have, these businesses that were shut down during the pandemic weren't shut down because they were bad businesses, that the owners made bad decisions, that they picked the wrong location, or they screwed up their business plan. All of those things still happen. They happen in bad times and they happen in good times, and there's no shame in that either. But I got to tell you, these businesses were shut down in order to protect society. They were told by governments that they needed to be closed. Remember, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and that was over 360 days ago. many of them have remained shut down. Right now, restaurants in Toronto have been closed for, I think, close to 300 days. Hair salons, almost 200 days. It's crazy. We've got the bills that they've inherited are not their bills, they're society's bills. And it's deeply unfair to expect that the business owner to eat those costs. But unfortunately, even with the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy, the CEBA loan program, and others, none of that is fully compensating business owners for the losses that they've incurred. And that's the piece that I think we've got to make sure that governments pick up. The dead weight of this debt that is going to be dragging business owners down in the months ahead. And I will add, if I can just sneak in just a reinforcement of Deanne's point. Look, during the pandemic, it created a whole bunch of winners and losers. If, you know, and look, Deanne and I spar on this from time to time, and I appreciate her support of small. But those big guys, they were able to stay open. They didn't, the Premier of Ontario didn't shut down Costco and Walmart. He shut down the small independent guy that may have 3 or 4 customers a day. And how unfair is that? And we've got to make sure that we put that incredibly discriminating policy behind us for good. So if there need to be interventions, they need to be fair for everybody of all size. If for goodness sakes, if we're gonna give one person an advantage over the other, give it to the small, give it to the new, give it to the people that have struggled to gain access to the Canadian marketplace for years and years, not to the monolithic players that already have big budgets.
Certainly a challenge. Thank you, Dan. So for this last question, before I open it up to the audience for their questions, I'll invite each of you to chime in. What do you think is the most important, or are the most important metrics to demonstrate impact in the area of entrepreneurship? So what are measures of success? Dan, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Look, I will say, look, many business people, when they're starting their business, the metric they're focusing on often is making money, making enough money to pay themselves an income. But I got to tell you, when I talk to business owners that have been around a few years, that shifts over time. And often the metric that they're most concerned about, especially as the business is, if it's been a successful business and has lasted the test of time, is what they're able to do for the community, what they're able to do for their staff and to the areas that they serve. I've spoken to countless numbers of business owners who have had the big fat offer from the American company that wants to buy them for their client list or perhaps for their product or service. And they've said no, because they know that the jobs are going to be taken out of Estevan, Saskatchewan or Bathurst, New Brunswick. And they want to make sure, they're most proud of the contributions they've made to the charitable groups and organizations that they support, to the community for the services that they provide and the jobs that they create for other people. So it really does shift over time. And one of the things that's super encouraging to me right now is a lot of younger business owners start off with that as part of their intention. It's not just a side thing that they realize later as they've matured, but they actually say, how can my business make a difference in the society and the community that I serve? And that's super exciting. And I hope that continues. You got to have a balance of both. You can't do it one way or the other. But that is a really interesting and I think positive trend. And Canadians do love their small businesses. We're a nation of small businesses, and their day is coming again.
Karen.
I think this echoes some of what Dan was said. It's very personal to the entrepreneur. And so I think the important thing is that I think the most important metric for a business is the metric that defines success on their terms. So that might be keeping their employees. That might be being a business for 10 years and being a pillar of their community. The partnership that we have with TD Bank is for side hustle businesses. So in the case of a side hustle, an entrepreneur might really want to be able to have their side business at the scale and size that it can be a side business, because they also do want to have their day job for whatever reason that's personal to them. So I think it's really important that that we don't only celebrate the multi-million and billion-dollar businesses, or the ones that are raising all this capital or getting a big exit or sale. Like, I love celebrating, the chocolatier on the Danforth here in Toronto that has a line going around the block, especially if you need 2 meters between shoppers, and is just doing what she loves. This is Mary's Brigadero, because she loves to do it, and she has a thriving business that's the size that she wants it to be.
Those are delicious chocolates. I agree. Deanne?
Well, I think Karen and Dan covered the points, and I think Karen's point is right, is bang on, which is the metric is decided by the owner. I mean, it can, that owner may be driven by philanthropic sentiments, may want to just make lots of money. So it's really all over. There are different metrics, but what I would say is be true to it. It is that 101 class when it comes to branding. It's really understanding what your mission is, what you are trying to accomplish, and stay true to it. That is where it becomes extremely important, regardless of what the metric is.
Deanne and Christelle, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely on the same page. It's defined by the founder and the owner, and I think it's important, especially for the young people tuning in, to you define what success means to you. It's not about comparing, especially in this day of social media and all of that. It's not about comparing what the next business is doing. You define what that looks like for you. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to be that entrepreneur who's making millions, but it's like you're on the verge of depression, committing suicide, you have no time. Like, that is not fun, right? So you want to define that for yourself, the sense of balance, what's important to you, and the peace that you want to maintain, and the balance that you want to continue to have as an entrepreneur for you and your staff as well. So I think establishing those clear, intentional goals at the beginning is critical, or re-exploring that. I mean, I think everybody kind of went through this introspection as well during COVID, in terms of just maybe realigning and redefining what success looks like for them in their business. But obviously, still business. You don't want to be in the red month over month, right? You still want to have a positive cash flow. But that being said, defining what that success looks like for you holistically is more critical than anything else.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing those deep insights with us. And I know our audience is eager to ask some questions of their own, so let's open it up to them. If you do have any questions for our panel, send it through the chat function. If you want to open up the chat, there's a little box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll read them out loud. So let me go to the chat right now. The first one from Colin. How do we convince entrepreneurs and small businesses to take help from students? That's an interesting question. Dan, maybe I'll go to you first.
Sure. Well, it's not just students. Often for business owners, it's take advice from anyone. So if you're a student feeling like the business owner may not be taking your advice, it may not just be you. And that is one of the failings of a lot of business owners. And again, as we were just talking about, you have to set your own compass and figure out how you want to run things in your own show. That's one of the reasons why people are attracted to be in business in the first place, is that they get to make these kinds of calls. But sometimes along with that comes the tendency to ignore good advice. There are a lot of businesses that we knew, all of us knew, including business owners in their hearts of hearts, that Canadian small firms were unprepared for the huge shift that had been happening pre-pandemic to be online. And so a lot of business owners were seriously caught unprepared. Those that had made some early pivots pre-pandemic were in better shape than those that hadn't. And so it's ensuring that, that I think one of the potentially good things that's come out of it is that some of the veteran business owners that look like me, the old white guy that's losing his hair, may now be a little bit more willing to listen to some of the advice and insights that that the younger generation may bring to the table as part of their team or as an advisor to the team. And so there is that potential of some positive outcomes coming with it.
And Deanne, you represent a spectrum of businesses, so perhaps maybe a perspective on the medium to large.
You'd be surprised how many of these companies will and are much more open now to students coming in. And so my suggestion to the students is to look at what some of the schools and universities have been doing. I know that U of A in Edmonton as a program where the students do research for retailers. And in fact, they even do it at a fee, but it's a reduced fee. And what they've done is they've used the school to add credibility to what they were bringing as a project. So that the students have to learn to use their own network as well to try to convince the business, regardless of size, Nancy, because it's more a mentality of the business owner or the president or senior executive in a mid or large firm. And those who tend to be more open are those that you have noticed are, pivoting or trying, experimenting a lot, regardless if they failed or not. They tend to be more open to getting advice. But I think there's the greatest advantage right now for students is the fact that very few companies have money to spend. So anything that's free is welcome. And I think there is there's some work for the students to do. This is a real life learning experience for them. They have to pitch themselves. They have to convince these people that, it's worth doing. So lesson one. And number two is look for businesses who tend to be creative and try to pivot. They tend to be more open at welcoming advice from outside.
Great perspectives that we can glean from our
Sorry, I look
students.
like if I've got a spirit sending me a slide here.
Maybe you do.
So,
maybe that's a good
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
I'm trying to. So if the student thinks I've just been blessed, that's not the case. So I'll shift a bit. Is the window.
Karen, I'm going to throw this one to you from Gaston. Do you think small businesses will start to thrive again once people get vaccines and regular shops and restaurants open again? Or do you think many were so badly affected by the pandemic that it will take years or decades to recover from the economic downturn?
Oh, Gaston, that's easy. Yes, both. I think both are going to happen. The reality is that some of them have managed to keep thriving throughout, or at least have survived and positioned themselves to thrive on the other side. Some of them are really struggling. And I think, because of that debt, some of them, I think the thing that's important for people to realize is that when the vaccines come back, that doesn't mean that things are back to normal for the small business owner, because they have had their underlying cost base is much more expensive. How they work is more expensive. They might have different employees, different staffing than they'd had before. So I think, I'd say it's going to be important that we're all very kind to business owners, because normal, being able to shop doesn't mean that things are normal for them yet. So I think that's one thing to really think about. And I'd say in order to help as many of these businesses survive and thrive as possible, it's really going to take intention from consumers. I think we used to be able to just kind of buy quickly, easily. We were very price sensitive. We were very convenience sensitive. Amazon, the place right next door, the place that's big and low cost. Well, that won't help small business. If you're buying everything at a big box store or buying everything on Amazon, and then you're sad when your local florist goes out of business, you were part of your local florist going out of business. I hate to say it. And so I'd say go to your local florist rather than buying your flowers with your groceries if you care that they stay. Pay a little bit more to buy something locally rather than buying it online. Go to your local bookshop instead of just ordering something from Amazon. That's one of the ways that we can help more companies make it through and really be positioned well on the other side. It's going to take that intention. And actually, I do want to mention one other point because it's important. Intention is the types of retailers. We've seen some really great intention. I think the support for Black business owners has been exceptional over the recent years. I hope people are really spending, not just tweeting and doing Instagram posts. Hopefully people are really actually purchasing from all the vibrant Black businesses across Canada. I know a couple of our Indigenous entrepreneurs have had great success, but it takes people actively shopping, actively spending money. Long answer, but it's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, very important point. Christelle, I'm going to ask you this one from Elle. Many small business owners, they've pivoted to digital platforms. The example Elle gives is a Zumba instructor starting to charge online for her courses or his courses. What kind of barriers do you think small business owners face from going online?
Great question. Great question. So there's a few barriers, and maybe this is where you guys can come in with some solutions. So some of those barriers are a few things. So around, right, if you're going to be now fully digital, like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, understanding ads and what the full capability is so that it's really niche to your industry, to your business model, so that you're really finding and, you know, targeting your ideal consumer. That's one. Number two, a lot of these things you want to have a professional and elegant presentation online because, you know, studies show that people are more engaged when the quality is up there. So there's a lot of opportunity in terms of finding the right videographers who also are going to understand their whole creative marketing branding to ensure that the video content is engaging, is good quality, the audio is on point, and that it's also branded in a way that's continuous and that matches perhaps their email marketing campaigns or their, you know, online presence through various social media channels, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And also exploring, you know, now if we're just being specific to fitness, but depending on the industry that you're in, I think some of the barriers are, you know, for the entrepreneurs who may not have those specific skill sets. So for them to outsource, you know, they have to outsource those type of requirement skills. And so obviously it's finding the budget to find that, but also it's finding the right fit, because sometimes when it comes to creative, you know, collaboration, it also has to be the right fit. So I think that's one of the barriers as well. And also sometimes the entrepreneurs don't have the full knowledge base around which apps and which applications would be a great opportunity for them to be more visible online as well. So for example, if it's someone who is doing Zumba or anything fitness related, there's tons of apps that allow you to be an instructor and sell your video content, you know, as online educational videos on specific platforms. And so sometimes it's having the time to do that research, to set yourself up on that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there as well. And we're also seeing other entrepreneurs pivot, now providing teaching and coaching online. And so those similar elements apply to them as well, finding which platforms make sense from an educational standpoint for them to reach a wider demographic, because the opportunity there is now, you know, with being more digital, you're able to reach a wide, it's a global reach, but you can still find that, you know, that perfect, not that perfect, but that preferred consumer for your business industry and model.
That answer, Christelle. And so I was actually going to ask another question, but I looked at the time and wow, that hour really flew by. So that was a jam-packed, inspiring afternoon. I said at the beginning of the forum, entrepreneurship and supporting our communities is so important to TD, and we are excited about this opportunity for you to develop some innovative solutions to the challenges faced by small businesses. We are very grateful to Enactus Canada for convening this forum and to all of the exceptional panelists who joined us today, sharing their wisdom and insights on this important topic. And of course, thank you to the students who participated. Thank you for both your engagement and your entrepreneurial endeavors. So good luck of the Irish today. Good luck to you with your project pitches and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everyone.